Well, hey there guys, I'm Axel the Beast of ZeldaEngine.net, and this video is about Operation Moonfall, which is a fan campaign of sorts that's in support of Majora's Mask 3D, you know, to follow up Ocarina of Time 3D. And it kind of has a terrible name. I mean, no offense, but it is kind of a funny name. It's kind of like a play on the Operation Rainfall thing, which, for those who don't know what that is, that's basically a campaign to get a bunch of Japan-only Wii RPGs released in the US. And it's a very pun-tastic name. It's kind of silly in my opinion, but I guess it's not the worst thing in the world. If you've watched my videos enough, you probably know that Majora's Mask is my favorite Zelda game, so my opinion on Operation Moonfall might surprise you a little. Or maybe it won't, considering that if you've watched my videos enough, you'll know that I'm not too crazy about remakes. I don't support Operation Moonfall, and I'm even kind of against it. Thing is, you should only remake a game if there's a reason to. Did the original game have flaws or things that needed to be improved or could be improved? Did it have things that either the developers or fans originally wanted to have added to the game? Did it just suck? You know, these are reasons to remake a game. I always use this example, but Resident Evil on the GameCube was a remake of the original Resident Evil, and it's pretty much the example of a perfect time for a remake. The original had a lot of issues and was certainly dated, and they improved on it in a lot of areas, especially with the acting and presentation. It was a great remake. Even Ocarina of Time had its reasons to be remade. I mean, first of all, and probably least of all, is the graphics. I mean, Ocarina of Time is pretty dated. I think of all the Zelda games, it's aged the least gracefully, visually at least, and I think it looks worse than most other Zelda games in that regard. And I think that was its only real flaw, the fact that it has somewhat dated graphics and quickly aging graphics. And, you know, I think just visually it could have used the improvement, and I think that was a good thing for Ocarina of Time 3D. It also had the advantage of status and timing, though. Someone pointed out to me that Nintendo wanted to have a Zelda game on all current Zelda consoles, which I'd imagine is partially because of the 25th anniversary of Zelda. So, you know, Ocarina of Time 3D was a pretty quick fix, you know, quick solution to have that game on the 3DS. But at the same time, Ocarina of Time is a critically acclaimed game, one of the most popular and acclaimed Zelda games of all time, and indeed, it's considered the best game of all time by a lot of people. So naturally, remaking the best game of all time / best Zelda game of all time, at least according to popularity, for the anniversary just makes sense. But now with Majora's Mask, it doesn't have any of the status or timing benefits, and there isn't really anything that, you know, needs to be or should be improved about the game. I mean, you have complaints among fans about the time cycle and the save system, you have complaints about the difficulty or the dungeon design and things like that, but these are all things that make Majora's Mask exactly what it is. These are all the things people would want fixed are key elements of the game that should not be changed. Majora's Mask should not be edited. So all that's really left with Majora's Mask is the graphics, but unlike Ocarina of Time, they're still pretty good. They still look really nice, really good. They definitely didn't age like Ocarina of Time did, and it probably has to do with the expansion pack and the polygons and such. Either way, even if it didn't look good and that was still like a totally full reason to remake the game, I don't think graphics are a very important aspect of the game, or at least certainly not the most important aspect of any given video game, and I think the fact that people still love retro games, and the fact that Ocarina of Time, probably the worst looking Zelda game right now, is like the best game of all time, I think proves that other people stand with me on that. And, you know, remaking a game just so it can have better graphics, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Just play it on the N64 or Virtual Console. Or, I mean, by all means, re-release it, but there's no reason to remake it. That's just a waste of energy. You can make it more accessible without fully remaking it. A lot of people bring up that they can add extra content like Ocarina of Time 3D had, like the boss challenges or the Master's Quest, or, you know, even new stuff like optional dungeons or just new content in general. And that's a really cool idea, but adding them to an existing game just to justify a remake, that doesn't make sense. I mean, if you have another reason to do a remake, of course, add that kind of stuff. I mean, add more content and make it even better of a remake. That would be awesome. But those don't justify a remake on your own. You don't just go around saying, "Oh, we could add more content to this old game now, so let's do it!" If you really have ideas for awesome new content or dungeons or things like that, why not just make a new Zelda game? I mean, you could even base it off the game itself if you want it to be really similar. I mean, I've talked a lot about how I don't want Nintendo to drop any of the gameplay styles or you know, story styles or different gameplay types of the different Zelda games entirely. I want them to reuse them again at some point, and this would be a perfect way to do that. If you really want to add to the game, why not make a new game very much like it? That's a perfect thing. It's like the perfect setup. Another issue that Operation Moonfall brings to mind is a long-standing concern of mine, particularly since Ocarina of Time 3D was announced, really, and that's the tide of remakes. Everyone has been talking about how cool it would be to have a remake of this game or that game, and like A Link to the Past or Majora's Mask, and the question really boils down to why? What reason do you have to remake it? It's just so it looks new, or so it lines up with, like, you know, modern innovations in the game industry? I mean, why not just play the old game? I mean, it's not like it's bad. I mean, Zelda is an excellent series, and all the games are, like, virtually perfect. I can't think of any Zelda games where there's any real reason to, like, to remake them. They're just, like, almost perfect. There's not a lot that you can add or change about them. It becomes especially ridiculous when you talk about things like that rumor that Aonuma wanted to remake A Link to the Past and make it like Twilight Princess, because that's a terrible idea. You're taking a 2D game and you're making it 3D, and you're taking 2D gameplay and you're making it 3D, and you're taking a completely one art style and turning it into a completely different art style, because no matter what you think, A Link to the Past and Twilight Princess did not have the same art style, and it wasn't just the graphical and you know, like, dimension difference. There was a big difference there, and that would just turn A Link to the Past into a totally different game. So if you're going to make it into a totally different game, why don't you actually make it into a totally different game, as in a completely new game? That's more worth the time. I mean, if tons of remakes are made, that's just kind of lazy, and it's just better to actually make new games. I mean, work on a full, real title instead of, like, putting half effort into it. You know, I think that a lot of people, and I'll admit not all of them, I mean, maybe not even most of them, and just a fair amount of people, just get excited about remakes because they seem awesome without really thinking about, like, why should they be remade? I mean, just take a look at the whole series. I mean, you got A Legend of Zelda, Adventure of Link, A Link to the Past, Link's Awakening, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, the Oracle games, the Wind Waker, the Minish Cap, Twilight Princess, Phantom Hourglass, and Spirit Tracks. These games are so good and complete, there's very little reason to dwell on them and want them remade. Some fans have their own personal reasons for wanting Majora's Mask remade. Nostalgia, it's their favorite game, or they consider Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask a pair, so they want a pair of remakes. These are all personal reasons, and while I don't share them, well, except for Majora's Mask being my favorite game, I can't really dispute them either. If you want a remake made for a good reason, then that's cool. I don't draw issue with that. It just bugs me to see people talking about remakes without a reason. They don't have a reason wanting it to be made, and they're suggesting to remake the entire series or something, or it seems like they're implying that. And I think that's bad, because ultimately a new game is better, and time and energy are just better spent on new stuff. Now, people argue that Ocarina of Time 3D was made by Grezzo, not Nintendo, so it wouldn't detract from the series, and Grezzo can make Majora's Mask 3D and possibly more remakes, and Nintendo can still make new Zelda games. But still, the remakes don't really have a lot of reason to exist in the first place, so Grezzo's time would still probably be better spent, again, making more new Zelda games, so we can have even more of them. That would be cool, wouldn't it? I mean, even if they didn't do that, I think seeing what non-Zelda original games they could make is more worth their and our time. I think it's more beneficial to gamers and the industry than rehashing an old game that doesn't need to be improved. Of course, a Majora's Mask remake would make a lot of money, but that's not a reason to buy it. That's a reason to sell it. Ultimately, there's still very little reason for us as gamers to play it over a new Zelda game. A new Zelda game, even one in the style of Majora's Mask, would be more worth getting than a Majora's Mask remake. That said, I don't hate Majora's Mask 3D enough that I wouldn't buy it if it was made, but I still find that Nintendo, Grezzo, and the fans' time is better spent with new titles than with remakes. I mean, make the old game more accessible by re-releases, downloads, collector's discs, whatever. Do that by all means. But don't waste your time changing or adding to something that's already complete. But what do you think? Do you support Operation Moonfall, or are you against it, or are you somewhere in between, or do you just don't care? How do you feel about the idea of a Majora's Mask 3D in relation to Ocarina of Time 3D, and what do you think about my points and thoughts on the matter? Tell me in the comments, and I'll see you guys later. Well, hey there, guys. I'm Axel the Beast, and this is... Thing is, you really shouldn't remake a game unless there's a reason to. Were there flaws with the games, or was there... A lot of people bring up that they can add extra content. I mean,